MMORPGs used to be impressive for the fact that they were online alone. That's what was impressive about it. You said to someone, hey, you can play a game online, and people were suddenly thinking, oh my god, that's amazing. Then that got taken away and replaced by social media. By Facebook, by WhatsApp, by Discord, all that kind of stuff. Even by Twitch. Because the games used to foster a sense of community. And then what happened was, and this happens with everything, okay? If you have something that does everything, people will gravitate to it for what it does that nothing else does.
So a few weeks ago, you guys sent me Josh's video, MMOs in an Awkward Space, and generally the core key principle thesis that he makes is that social media replaced the MMORPG genre. Now, I've thought about this for the last couple of weeks, and today I want to sit down and give you guys, I guess, some expanded thoughts that I have on that specific subject, because I don't actually think social media replaced the MMORPG. Either way, I don't think it actually replaced the MMORPG, but there is a little bit of history and context, and I'd like to provide a counterweight or some counterpoints to Josh's core thesis that he is presenting in his video. Now, his video is going to be linked in the description. Go check it out for yourselves. I'll also try to pin it in the comments for you guys as well to hopefully make it as easy as possible to find the video that I'm referencing. But at its core, I'd like to make 3 key points that kind of, I think, provide a little bit more context, at least where I'm coming from. This is also me speaking as a content creator and an MMORPG fan. And so overall, you're going to get an inherent bias because I do see things a little bit differently, but you can always let me know where I missed the mark or, you know, if I hit it out of the park in this one. So let me know in the comments and let's go ahead and dive into this video. First and foremost, the thing I think more than anything else, especially when we talk about MMOs online, is that I don't think MMOs are popular as people think, wish, or hope that they were once. I think World of Warcraft is the obvious exception to all the models, but generally speaking, when you look at the MMO and you look at how it evolved, like you're getting hundreds of thousands of players, not millions of players. WoW really did, I think, throw off the curve. Like if you think about school grading and you have a kind of a general curve, you got WoW coming in, dropping pure 100s on the test and screwing up the curve for everybody else who's pulling in 40s and 50s, right? So at its core, WoW came in and completely disrupted the genre. And what I think is actually holding the genre back is that kind of pinnacle. People look to World of Warcraft and what it's done, and then they essentially then judge all other games off of that rather than looking at what each individual game does special or specific. And I think a lot of that is actually in the model of the MMO. While I definitely feel the subscription model is the most fair, I don't think it's the model that actually won. And I think now at this point in its history, it's actually holding MMOs back. But if you guys want me to explore that idea with you guys in a future video, just let me know as I bump the mic with my hands because I'm Italian and I talk with my hands. And yes, I am Italian. I just am a ginger too. So we could do 2 things. Anyhow, so when we look at that aspect, I think essentially that a lot of people seem to kind of remember the time when, MMOs were the talking points. In fact, they're on the news talking about how they're ruining people's lives. This is going to be where people are escaping. And I think ultimately when we actually look at the genre itself, you actually kind of, while we call them MMORPGs, you really have 2 completely different types of games. You have before WoW as its own genre, as a living world, as a second life in a way that you invest in and that you have this community a part of. You have this forced multiplayer, you have this aspect that we're all in this together and you could really kind of do whatever you want. And then you have the post-WoW scene, which really is its own genre in itself. It's that theme park design, which means it's more accessible. It tries to get people into the content, playing it with their friends, trying to remove some of this friction, some of this barrier. And there's pros and cons to each model. Now, obviously, as an old school Final Fantasy XI player, I'm more prone to kind of remember the good old days of Final Fantasy XI and playing with friends and meeting people online. But as a dad, as a father of 5, I am recognizing that I definitely use the tools that are a part of modern MMOs to my advantage. That's the duty finder in Final Fantasy XIV. That's matchmaking within Destiny and things of that nature. Like there's a very key aspect there. But to Josh's core idea that MMOs were replaced by social media, I would counter that with no, social media just changed how people actually interact. Take Discord, take YouTube, take Twitch. More often than not, people now find communities around games that they're interested in through social media, as opposed to just using the games themselves as their form of communication. So as time has passed in this regards, you've seen that the things that MMOs once did that were unique trickle out into many other games. We're talking many other games of many other genres. Destiny's a great example of this, to where they've now just officially adopted the MMO label as an action MMO. But just note that that comes with weight, that comes with predisposed ideas of what it means. And it takes a long time to kind of teach people essentially what you are. They've avoided that. They actually shunned that label for a long time, but privately they were continually talking about Destiny as an MMO. And when we talk about it online, there are people who actively push off against that aspect, saying, no, it's not. And so that ends up becoming a point of discussion, namely because you have people with different aspects, because in a way we're using a label, but there's just all these different subgenres within the idea of massively multiplayer. And so that's something that I think we need to explore as a community overall, and maybe have a recategorization of that, just to kind of have a little bit more targeted speak, because there are some things on the horizon for MMOs that are really fascinating. But what I mean by the social media aspect is that whether I'm streaming, whether I'm playing, and to point out a Josh video talking about how we saw him talk about Lord of the Rings Online. I got messaged over and over again to go play Lord of the Rings Online. I thought that was fascinating. And it's because that when we start talking about these games, that's actually what is really good. It's called earned media within kind of market speak, etc. The idea that people go and make videos about or content about a game, that earned media then trickles out into your feed, and it gets you thinking about it and gets you talking about it, maybe even considering playing it. So I actually got a lot of messages from that. And I think that acts as a counterpoint to what Josh is talking about. And to take it just actually a step further, whenever I'm playing New World, Phantasy Star, Final Fantasy XIV, Destiny, you guys come and join me. You come and check out the Discord, and we end up building out this community of gamers who like to play video games and generally have a fun time. And so MMOs weren't replaced by social media. They were saved by social media as a genre goes, with barriers for entry that make it difficult for people to come in and play this game. As its core design, you now have this conversation that happens so people can kind of consume this stuff while at work and get an idea of how they can step into these games much easier, and generally find people that also share interest in living out this RPG fantasy in an online world. And so I don't think that they were replaced by it. I think they were saved by it, because the genre as a whole was being picked apart. And stubbornly enough, and this is some blame and maybe a little bit of bias that I have against World of Warcraft, where the genre itself was being kind of held hostage due to Blizzard and wanting to hold on to that massive amount of subscriber base, thus kind of almost in a way freezing it in time, not allowing it to evolve into a degree, and making it so risky that any other industry, any other business that tried to come in and, refine the genre was almost doomed to fail, to the point where we actually saw pretty much everybody dip out of the genre as a whole in terms of investment. And we have some rare exceptions to that, and thank goodness for that as a genre, that we've seen some level of innovation actually happen over the last 20 years, or actually the last decade is pretty much when we've kind of seen everything kind of get stuck in terms of it. And to kind of highlight that point, I've seen a lot of different commentators talk about how when they were first playing the genre, they imagined how amazing it would be in 20 years. But what ultimately ended up happening is that it got dominated by one game. And because of that domination, anybody had to kind of basically try to make that same game, and it didn't ever work out. So we just saw time and time again, clone after clone fail and fail. Even if that clone was actually bringing in something unique to it, it couldn't compete against just the wealth of content and the community, right? No one wants to be, back to the social media aspect, on the second largest Twitter or the second largest Facebook, because there's nobody there. They want to be a part of where everybody's at. And I think that actually kind of highlights one of the things that we see within MMOs as kind of a social space. Now, this takes me into kind of my third point. And it's that MMOs really kind of shot themselves in the foot, and they've held on too long, I think, to the idea of what it means to be a subscription. Yes, it's the most fair. I've stated this numerous times. I'm going to state it here very clearly for everybody, because I know this is a point of contention that I get online. I don't understand why paying $15 a month and everybody's on the same page did not win. because what I see is that people will say, no, I don't want to play that game that requires me to spend $15 every month to play it. I'd rather play this free to play game where I'm going to spend $600 a month just to play it and just to kind of have all this like glamour and glitz and flair. I don't understand how that didn't win. And so I've literally sat down with parents who've gotten calls that their kids spent $600 or $800 on Fortnite, right? I don't understand how like a minimum $15 and you and I, everything's available to us versus like, okay, we're not going to charge anybody. Like just that weird barrier for entry clearly hasn't had an impact. And I think what we're going to see right now over the course of the next 5 years is the genre trying out new business models, because I think what you will end up finding, and what I think is that as we enter into the third age of the MMORPG, is that the business model needs to change, but it doesn't mean it needs to be predatory. It doesn't mean that I'm advocating for free-to-play microtransaction, pay-to-win hellholes. Far from it. Like what I'm advocating for is that a better business model for the genre itself, so that it can attract investment, so good ideas can float to the top, so that as a whole, I think there is an interest. And I think social media proves that. I think the fact that you guys have subscribed to this channel proves that. I think that's the fact that you subscribe to Asmongold and to Josh and to like why am I drawing a blank? Every of the other MMO commentators, I'm going to say hunting for games from a Final Fantasy XI perspective. I think there is a general hunger for MMORPG content and for these kind of games. However, I think that the facts and the realities of life have shifted, and we're looking at a genre in transition, in flux, and ultimately we'll have to see what happens with it. I think money is important. I'm definitely somebody who roots for companies to make money, because if they can make money, they can make more games. And at the same time, I think that has to come across with a level of trust and a level of fairness when it comes down to it. So obviously we'll explore that. So I think MMOs kind of held themselves, kind of did this to themselves as well. Other genres have absorbed everything that kind of made MMOs unique, with some rare exceptions. And I think if MMOs lean into what actually makes them unique, when we start talking about what is an MMO in 2025, what is an MMO in 2030, versus like something like a game like Fortnite, where I pointed out, why am I running a dungeon with 4 or 5 people when in Fortnite, like you're playing a game with over 100? And I think essentially where the MMO needs to kind of figure out, like, what is it that it does itself unique and its strengths, and go from there. Now, that all being said, I still think social media saved the genre as a whole. I think it allows people to, as a content creator, to find communities and people who are looking for that, to kind of find a content creator who maybe like aligns with them and build and play and have a good old time. But I know that's not a one-to-one case. That's just the case of what we do here. So, you can clearly obviously disagree with that from your experience, because it can also just be just as bad or just as toxic as well. Anyway, those are the thoughts. Thanks guys for being here. Hopefully I didn't waste your time. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video and the discussion. I look forward to your thoughts in the comments, and I wish you guys the best. Thanks for being here again. Love you faces, and I'll see you next time.
Yeah. It's time to chill out on the couch and read some comments. That's right. You know me when it comes to Destiny. I'm off with a clan, and I'm glad you're feeling better. Oh yeah.